Oh, wow. I thought I could play this moment very, very cool because we do this, we do this almost daily in our assemblies, and somehow this is very, very special. I feel so grateful for being here. Could we have one more round of applause for the lovely, lovely students that have organized this? Amazing what students can do when you encourage them. So, I can't believe I'm about to say this after hearing so many brilliant minds speaking. Can't believe I'm about to say something extremely embarrassing about myself. I cannot do maths. I am really, really bad. I'm that person that, when the bill comes at the restaurant, and if it doesn't have the percentage on it, I just throw my wallet at the person and let them deal with it. I cannot do maths. But don't worry, my TED Talk is not going to be about maths or my lack of skills. Actually, I'm not really bad at maths. That was my self-perception. I only had one bad teacher. And all it takes is one bad teacher to mess up your self-perception. Now, I wanted to see if the audience can relate to what I'm saying right now. And I'm going to want you to maybe show your hands if you've ever had a bad teacher based on, let's see, if I say some characteristics, because it's not really easy to define what a bad teacher is. And my students and I, we always have this conversation. What makes a teacher good or bad, right? It's a discussion. It's not just black or white. So let's see if you've ever had a teacher who maybe shouted at you. Have you ever had a teacher who was maybe mean? Have you ever had a teacher who was stressed and then made you feel stressed just because they were stressed? Yeah. But have you ever had a teacher that was extremely boring and made you fall asleep? Yeah, I know. But then the worst case of all, I'll tell you, my teacher. Have you ever had a teacher that when they walked in the room, they made you feel shivers down your spine, like literal shivers, and then your hands would feel clammy? Yeah, that was my teacher. And when she would walk into the room, I swear I heard the room just jiggle, and then I would pray that she wouldn't find my name in the attendance record, but she would, and she would point me out to the whiteboard. I would go there, I would lose myself, didn't know what to say. She would start shouting, I would start crying, it would be a disaster. And then I would keep going home, and I would go home to my mom, and I would still be crying. And it would still be a disaster. And my mom would say, oh, darling, I don't know why my mom sounds British, by the way, because she's not. But she would say, oh, darling, you're just too sensitive, toughen up. And it's like you're telling somebody, stop being poor. You can't. Lady, I'm 12. I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to toughen up. You have to give me the tools to do that. But the need pushes you to find solutions. So I needed to toughen up, and that's how I found drawing. Because in the lessons, you can't really do much. And drawing, kind of looks like you're taking notes. So I started doodling. And that was my form of escapism. That's how I was in my brain. And art as a form of a meditation is for another TED Talk, but that worked for me. And it could work for many more people. But one day, the art teacher came into the maths lesson. She saw my drawings and she was like, oh, these are really good. And I was like, I was afraid that the math teacher would hear. And the art teacher said, no, these are really good. Did you ever think of joining the art high school? And the math teacher said, yeah, I know, she keeps doing that in my lessons. I think so too. And so I did. Fast forward later, went home, talked to my parents. They laughed, and then they said, no, she might have a point. Because, back then, parents listened to teachers. Same way as people used to listen to doctors before Google, And so my parents said, yeah, okay, let's give it a go. And so fast forward later, I managed to win the first prize at the National Olympics of Visual Art and Architecture, which shifted my entire perspective. So I was no longer, the kid that was getting bullied because she was bad at maths. I was no longer the wimpy kid, the shy kid. Suddenly I was, creative and popular because of that one shift. And now I'm going to ask you again, have you ever had a good teacher? And again, if you want, I'll ask you to do a show of hands. Have you ever had a teacher who was kind? Have you ever had a teacher who was funny, made you laugh? Have you ever had a teacher who you liked spending your breaks with because they made you feel safe? And you know, when children are safe, when they feel safe and comfortable, that's when they learn the best. So my teachers from the art high school were amazing. And I was very grateful to be there. So I would spend all of my weekends there. I would spend every moment of my time there. And we would all do the same. And we all felt very grateful to be there. And this kind of leads me slowly to my first teaching truth. It's very hard to say a teacher is bad or a teacher is good, the same way you can't really say about a student's bad. Because we've had so many examples of students in ISB, for example, that almost failed or almost got expelled, that are now successful doctors or business people. And you hear that often, you know. And so my first teaching truth would say, don't put tags too soon. Don't put labels too early. Try not to have these preconceptions. Keep an open mind. And about this, I have a short story. You know, when you are at a party and you find out that somebody is a doctor, sometimes you feel like saying, you know, I have something that something is hurting here. Well, people do the same when they hear what I do. And when I say I'm an art teacher or that I'm an artist, and they come to me with drawings of their kids and they're like, is my child talented? And it's not for me to say. I can't say that. Almost maybe in 30 years, I'll be able to say that. Because what you think is successful is not just talent. It's talent and a lot of work and many more things. So again, try not to put labels. Try not to put tags, right? Are they talented or not? Am I going to decide the destiny of my child? And about that, this funny thing happened. This parent came to me, and she was really nice mom. She came to me and she said, Mr. O, I heard so many good things about your teaching, and my daughter, she really loves drawing. She really loves drawing, and she wants to study architecture, and we would love for you to work with her. Will you work with her? And I said, yes, I will work with her. How old is she? And she said, 3. And I looked down, and there she was, and she said, hi, I'm Sarah. And I said, hi, Sarah, I'm Theo, and hi. And we started working together. And later on, I still met her in ISB. She was a student here when I first started teaching, and she's now a very successful lawyer. So that's my first teaching truth, and which leads me sort of to my second one. My second one relates to a period of time in our lives that's very tricky. And I know you will all relate, which is adolescence. And can I just say off the record, just stop filming, teenagers, am I right? They are so annoying, but so interesting. They can be absolutely exasperating. But there is hope. I found brilliant students, brilliant teenagers. And do you know what the characteristic of most brilliant teenagers is? They do a lot of extracurricular stuff, like, for example, organizing TEDx, and many more things. Because the students that are engaged in extracurricular activities seem to go over their way when they could be at home just being on their phones or being static. But one resource that teenagers have that's very important is that they have a lot of energy. And if you don't direct that energy, if you don't focus it, and if you don't steer it into the right way, believe me, you won't like how they steer it themselves. And that's when the rebellious phase starts. But if you steer it the correct way, and if you give them options, they will most likely find something that they like doing. And in ISB, I had the pleasure of being the head of enrichment for a couple of years. And I had to do some research and find out what universities are looking for in young people to see what we could offer here in ISB that could push them. And the answer was everything. Universities are looking for well-rounded, complex young people, which means if you, my dear students, do a sport of any kind, if you do football or volleyball or basketball, if you do karate or fencing or swimming, if you do karting, if you even do, let's say, if you play a musical instrument, if you do piano or guitar, flute, I don't know, canto, you could have lovely results with that. If you are a fan of the arts, you can do that, arts and crafts. You can do modern foreign languages. You can do board games. You can go to maybe a debating club. You can do MUN. You can even do the Duke of Edinburgh program. That is a really good program, trust me. Just do something. My advice to you is just do something, which leads me to my second teaching truth. My second teaching truth is about young people trying to find their passions My dear students, try to find a passion. Try to find something you're interested in. Try to find something that motivates you. Try to find something that you like doing. And, my dear teachers, try to give your students options. Try to give your students reasons to be passionate. And, dearest parents, encourage your children to find passions. And this second truth is very, very important because you'll see that the students that have found their passions are very, very happy. They're happy and they have friends, they have a nice social group, and they're more likely to solve their own problems, they are more empathetic, they are more likely to be good leaders and to have initiative and to be strong and forward-thinking people. And even if, because I've had this discussion with a friend of mine that's also a parent, and she said, yeah, but you know, my boy didn't really find a passion the same way you found arts. And I was like, yeah, that's okay, because the time spent looking for that passion at least made them see what they like and what they don't like. And that's a very important factor in growing up, right? So that's my second teaching truth. Or second teaching tip, now that I'm thinking about it, it could be a tip, right? Find a passion. Which leads me to my third teaching tip, or teaching truth, which probably is the most grown-up of them all. Now, after going to this art high school that I was very, very proud of and very passionate in, because, you know, speaking of not putting labels, all the kids there looked very strange. Like all of them, they were, you know, long-haired, short-haired, they were bald, had tattoos on. They didn't wear uniforms. They had maybe a lot of jewelry or no shoes, no shirts. Didn't matter. Didn't matter because they were passionate people. We didn't put labels because we knew what we wanted to do. And then after graduating from high school, went on to universities because my mom insisted on the second one, fine. Graduated from both of the universities because I was an overachiever always. And I did do a lot of activities. In my university, I was head of the president-student union, and we would organize exhibitions and proms, and we would have fun, and it was, I think, one of the best times of my life. But after that, it all ended, because I was thrown into the great wide world. And so I had to rebrand myself, and I had to refine myself as an adult, which you are also going to have to do one day. And how do you approach this? How do you find yourself? What do you want to say? Who are you? How do you find that out? And for me, working in marble got me a solution, because I'll tell you, working in marble is pretty hard. And remember how I said I was bad at maths? I wasn't really bad at maths, because there's a lot of maths in art, a lot of it. And you have to do a lot of calculations and proportions and measurements to get it right. Marble is no joke. And when you start carving it, you can't just say, whoops, there goes the nose. You know, whoops, I'll stick it back. You can't. And imagine Michelangelo working on David and going like, oh, what am I forgetting? Oh, the legs. Oh, you know, no, you can't do that. So you need some thinking. You need to think. And you know how everybody nowadays says, oh, you're overthinking, like that's a bad thing? No, underthinking is a bad thing. Overthinking is good. Use it. And so I needed to do some thinking. So the first thing that I decided to do was I needed to go away. So I found a flight to Vietnam, all the way to Vietnam. And back then, we didn't have in-flight entertainment like we do nowadays. So all you had to do for 14 hours was either sleep or stare out the window or think. And by the time I got back from Vietnam, because I'm a big fan of traveling, by the time I got back from Vietnam, I already had my answer about what I wanted to do with my life, and that was teaching. Because by that time, I already got the offer from Fundația Calea Victoriei, where I first started teaching. And from that experience, I am now in front of you today, and I'm telling you that I've taught over 3,000 people. 2,000 of them were people, adults, grown-ups, that I taught at Fundația Calea Victoriei, which I've introduced into painting and modeling, not the Vogue one, but clay modeling and sculpting and mosaics and history of art. And the other 1,000 is from ISB. I've seen 9 generations. I've taught 9 generations, and I've seen these thousands of kids, how they blossom and grow. And I think I've validated my own teaching methods, because I must be doing something right if I'm here, right? So after doing all of that thinking for myself, I was thinking about my process of thinking, which is sort of called metacognition, if you want to use fancy words. But it's so helpful if you allow yourself to reflect, to think. Because life is not just about doing. It's also about understanding why you're doing what you're doing, right? So the only way that you're ever going to understand life and what's happening around you is because of reflection. And I think schools have caught on to this because most of the modern universities and more modern teaching systems, not the old ones that I was used to, but the modern teaching systems have all integrated reflection as a curriculum-based thing. It's mandatory. It's mandatory for young people to reflect on their actions. It's mandatory for them to be able to make mistakes. And that's exactly what we were saying earlier. Because from mistakes, you learn, and then you become braver. And we want to raise brave kids. We want to raise brave young people for the future. So my last advice to you, let's say my grown-up advice, and one that's probably helpful for us all. And I'm just going to say one last thing before everything. You know how people say, oh, I'm not creative at all? And I think that's not true because people think artists are creative because they're born that way, but I just say artists give themselves time to think, to reflect. You know how there's that meme, I don't know if you're aware of it, but there's that meme, what my friends think I do, what my parents think I do, what I actually do. Well, what people think artists do is that they paint all the time and that they sculpt all the time and they model. But actually, do you know what artists do all the time? That's what they do. They observe. They think. So, last teaching truth, last teaching tip. Give yourselves time to reflect, because only like that will you know your true self, your true nature, and the world around you. Thank you very much.